The kids' giggles sliced through the quiet of the living room like a firecracker. "You're married now," Timmy declared, his 6-year-old voice brimming with conviction as he pointed at me and my cousin Nate, his tiny finger wagging like a judge's gavel. I froze, my beer halfway to my lips, as Nate's deep laugh rumbled from the couch, his piercing blue eyes glinting with amusement, and something else I couldn't quite place. It was supposed to be a simple favor. My sister, Lila, had begged me to watch Timmy for the night while she and her husband dealt with a work emergency. I'm no babysitter. My life's more about late-night gigs at the skate shop and dodging my landlord's calls than wrangling kids. But Lila was desperate, and I'm a pushover for family. Problem was I had a shift I couldn't ditch, so I called Nate, my cousin, the guy who could charm a grizzly bear into a hug. He's the kind of guy who walks into a room and owns it, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, and a confidence that makes people lean in. He's also openly gay, unapologetic, and the family's golden boy, which is why I figured he'd handle Timmy no problem. "Mary," I choked out, setting my beer down on the coffee table. Timmy, perched on the rug with a pile of Legos, grinned like he'd just solved world peace. "Yep, Nate said you guys love each other, and that's what married people do." My stomach did a flip. Nate's grin widened, but he didn't correct the kid. Instead, he leaned back, one arm slung over the couch, and raised an eyebrow at me. "Well, Ethan," he said, voice low and teasing, "you're gonna break the kid's heart or what?" I should have laughed it off. I should have said, "Timmy, buddy, Nate's just joking." But something about the way Nate looked at me, half challenge, half something I didn't dare name, made my throat go dry. See, I've spent years telling myself I'm straight, that the way my pulse spikes around Nate is just cousin stuff. Admiration. Respect. Not the kind of thing that makes your palms sweat when he brushes past you in a crowded room. But Timmy's words and Nate's gaze cracked something open in me that night, something I'd buried under years of denial and cheap beer. The night had started innocently enough. Seattle was buzzing outside, the kind of crisp fall evening where the air smells like pine and possibility. Lila dropped Timmy off at my tiny craftsman house in Fremont, her face frazzled as she rattled off instructions. "Bedtime's 8. No sugar after 7. And Ethan, please don't let him watch those weird skateboarding crash videos you love." I nodded, already half distracted by the thought of Nate showing up. He'd texted he was free, which was a miracle since his life as a freelance graphic designer usually had him jetting between clients or charming his way through Seattle's queer scene. When Nate arrived, Timmy took to him like a moth to a flame. Nate's got this way with people, kids, adults, doesn't matter. He knelt down to Timmy's level, his leather jacket creaking, and ruffled the kid's hair. "What's the plan, champ? Build a Lego empire or fight some imaginary dragons?" Timmy's eyes lit up, and I swear I felt a pang of something, jealousy maybe, watching them click so effortlessly. I left for my shift at the skate shop, promising to be back by 9. Work was a blur. The shop was packed with teens hyped about the new deck designs, and I spent most of my time restocking grip tape and dodging questions about my own skating days. I used to compete back when I was younger and dumber, before a busted knee and a string of bad decisions sidelined me. Now, at 27, I'm just a guy behind the counter, living paycheck to paycheck and trying not to think too hard about what's next. When I got home, the house was suspiciously quiet. Too quiet. I found Nate and Timmy sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by a Lego fortress that looked like it belonged in a museum. Timmy was mid-story, waving a plastic dragon, while Nate listened like it was the most important tale in the world. And then the knight marries the prince. Timmy said, triumphant. Nate caught my eye and smirked. "Sounds like a solid ending, right, Ethan?" That's when Timmy dropped the bomb about us being married. I tried to laugh, but my voice came out shaky. "Kid, you got it all wrong. Nate's my cousin. We're just family." Timmy frowned, his little brow furrowing. "But Nate said you guys are best friends, and best friends get married if they love each other." Nate didn't help. He just leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and said, "Kid's at a point. Love's love, right?" I wanted to strangle him, or kiss him, or both. Instead, I changed the subject, tossing Timmy a controller for some kid-friendly video game to distract him. But as the night wore on, Timmy kept circling back to it, calling us the married guys, asking if we'd have a big wedding like in the movies. Nate played along, spinning wild stories about a ceremony with dragons and skateboards, each one making Timmy giggle harder. And every time Nate's eyes met mine, there was that look again, playful but with an edge that made my chest tight. By the time Lila picked Timmy up, he was half asleep, clutching a Lego knight and muttering about our wedding. Lila shot me a confused look, but I just shrugged, too rattled to explain. Nate stayed after she left, helping me clean up the Lego carnage. The house felt smaller with just the two of us, the air thick with something unspoken. "You didn't correct him," I said finally, stacking plastic bricks into a bin. Nate paused, his hand stilling. "Didn't see the harm," he said softly. "Kid's got a big heart. Let him dream." I wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't just about Timmy's imagination. It was about the way my heart was pounding, the way I couldn't stop noticing the curve of his jaw or the warmth of his voice. But I didn't. I just nodded, muttered something about needing sleep, and watched him grab his jacket and head out into the Seattle night. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Because Timmy's words weren't just a kid's fantasy. They were a mirror, reflecting something I'd been running from for years. And Nate, my infuriating, magnetic cousin, was at the center of it. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a problem I couldn't shake. Timmy's words echoed in my head like a catchy song I didn't want to like. "You're married now." I groaned, dragging myself to the kitchen for coffee. My tiny house felt too quiet without the chaos of last night, but the memory of Nate's smirk lingered like a ghost. I tried to focus on normal things, making toast, checking my phone, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw him leaning back on my couch, all easy confidence, daring me to say something. I wasn't ready to face whatever that was. Growing up, Nate had always been the cool cousin, the one who'd sneak me into concerts or teach me how to ollie on my first skateboard. He came out when he was 16, bold as brass, and our family, mostly, rolled with it. Seattle's progressive, and our folks are the live and let live type. Me? I'd always been the quiet one, the guy who kept his head down and his feelings locked up. Straight, safe, predictable. Except now, Timmy's innocent declaration had cracked that facade, and I didn't know how to patch it. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my spiral. A text from Lila. "Timmy won't stop talking about you and Nate getting married. What did you guys do last night?" I groaned again, louder this time. "How do you explain to your sister that her kid's got it in his head that you're in love with your cousin, because said cousin thought it was funny to play along?" I typed back a vague, "He's got a wild imagination," and left it at that. But I knew this wasn't going away. Timmy's the kind of kid who latches onto ideas like a dog with a bone, and I had a sinking feeling he'd bring it up every chance he got. Sure enough, when I swung by Lila's place that afternoon to drop off some of Timmy's forgotten Legos, he ambushed me at the door. "Uncle Ethan," he shouted, barreling into my legs. "Where's Nate? Is he coming to live with us?" I blinked, caught off guard. Lila, leaning against the kitchen counter, raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, Ethan," she said, her tone teasing but curious. "Where's your husband?" I felt my face heat up. "Not funny," I muttered, handing her the bag of Legos. Timmy tugged at my hand, undeterred. "You gotta have a wedding. I want to be the ring guy." I knelt down, trying to keep my voice steady. "Buddy, Nate and I aren't married. We're just cousins. You know, like family." Timmy's face scrunched up, like I'd told him the sky was green. "But you love him." "Nate said so." My heart stuttered. "Nate said so." What the hell was Nate playing at? I managed a weak smile, ruffled Timmy's hair, and bolted before Lila could grill me further. I needed answers, and I needed them from the source. I found Nate at his favorite coffee shop in Capitol Hill, a trendy spot with rainbow flags in the window and baristas who knew his order by heart. He was at a corner table, sketching on his tablet, his dark hair falling into his eyes. For a second, I just watched him, how his fingers moved with precision, how his lips curved slightly as he worked. Then I shook myself out of it and slid into the seat across from him. "You told Timmy we love each other?" I said, keeping my voice low but sharp. Nate didn't even look up from his tablet. Good to see you too, Ethan. His tone was light, but there was that edge again, the one that made my skin prickle. I didn't say anything that wasn't true. You're my favorite cousin. That's love, right? I opened my mouth and closed it. He wasn't wrong, not exactly. We'd always been close, closer than most cousins, maybe. Growing up, we'd spent summers exploring Seattle's backstreets, sharing secrets we didn't tell anyone else. But this felt different, dangerous, like we were teetering on the edge of something we couldn't come back from. Nate, you can't just let a kid think we're married, I said, leaning forward. He's telling everyone. Lila's asking questions. It's messing with my head. That last part slipped out before I could stop it. Nate's eyes flicked up, locking onto mine. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just studied me like he was seeing something new. Then he set his tablet down and leaned in, his voice soft but serious. Ethan, why is it messing with you? He asked. It's just a kid's game. Unless it's not. My breath caught. I wanted to laugh it off, to say he was being ridiculous, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't just Timmy's imagination stirring things up. It was me. It was the way I'd always noticed Nate a little too much, the way his laugh made my chest ache, the way I'd catch myself staring when he wasn't looking. I'd spent years calling it something else, anything else, but Timmy's words had ripped the veil off. I gotta go, I mumbled, standing abruptly. Nate didn't stop me, but his gaze followed me out the door, heavy and unyielding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Nate. The way he'd teased me, the way he'd looked at me, the way Timmy's words had felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed. I wasn't ready to face what it meant, but I couldn't keep running from it either. Not when Timmy, in his innocent, relentless way, kept pushing us together, and not when Nate, with his infuriating charm, seemed all too willing to let the kid's fantasy blur into something real. The next week was a blur of avoidance. I threw myself into work at the skate shop, staying late to reorganize shelves that didn't need it, anything to keep my mind off Nate and Timmy's relentless matchmaking. But Seattle's a small city when it comes to family, and I couldn't dodge them forever. Lila texted me on Wednesday, asking if I'd come to Timmy's school play on Friday. He's been talking about you and Nate nonstop, she wrote. Says you're both coming to cheer him on. What's going on with you two? I wanted to scream. Instead, I typed back a non-committal "we'll see" and hoped she'd drop it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't skip the play. Timmy had me wrapped around his little finger, and the thought of disappointing him twisted my gut. Plus, I knew Nate would be there. Lila had probably invited him too, and the idea of seeing him again sent a jolt through me, half dread, half something I wasn't ready to name. Friday night rolled around, and I found myself in a crowded elementary school auditorium, surrounded by parents clutching programs and kids buzzing with pre-show jitters. Timmy's play was some kind of fairy tale mashup, and he'd landed the role of a talking fox, which he'd been practicing for weeks. I spotted Nate as soon as I walked in, leaning against a wall near the stage, his leather jacket swapped for a dark sweater that made his eyes stand out even more. He waved me over, casual as ever, but there was a spark in his expression that set me on edge. You made it, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. His hand lingered a second too long, and I swear my skin burned where he touched me. Timmy's gonna lose it when he sees us both here. I forced a smile, tried to ignore the way my heart was hammering. Yeah, well, kids got high expectations. Hope we don't let him down. The lights dimmed, and we found seats near the back. The play was chaotic, kids forgetting lines, a cardboard castle wobbling dangerously. But Timmy stole the show, scampering across the stage with a foxtail pinned to his jeans, his grin visible even from the cheap seats. Every so often, he'd glance out at the audience, searching for us, and when he spotted us, he'd wave like he'd just won the lottery. Nate nudged me, whispering, "Kid's gonna make us sign a marriage contract by the end of the night." I snorted, but my laugh caught in my throat when I saw the way Nate was looking at me, soft, almost tender, like he was seeing right through my defenses. I turned back to the stage, my face hot, and tried to focus on Timmy's antics. But my mind kept drifting to Nate, to the way he'd always been there, a constant in my life, even when I didn't deserve it. He'd been the one to pick me up after my knee injury ended my skating dreams. The one who'd sat with me through long nights of doubt, never pushing, never judging. And now, here he was, letting a 6-year-old's fantasy pull us into uncharted territory. After the play, Timmy rushed over, still in his fox costume, and threw his arms around both of us. "You came. You both came," he squealed. "Now you gotta get married for real." The parents nearby chuckled, thinking it was cute, but I felt like I was drowning. Lila appeared, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You two are in deep with this one," she said, ruffling Timmy's hair. "He's got your wedding plan down to the cake flavor." Nate laughed, scooping Timmy up. "What kind we having, champ? Chocolate or vanilla?" Timmy didn't miss a beat. "Rainbow. Like the flag." My heart stopped. Nate just grinned, unfazed, and said, "Good choice." I wanted to disappear, but Timmy's joy was infectious, and Nate's ease with it all made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I was the one overthinking everything. Later, as we walked to the parking lot, Timmy clinging to Nate's hand and chattering about the play, I lagged behind, my mind racing. I wasn't ready to confront whatever was bubbling up inside me, but I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't there. Nate glanced back, catching my eye, and for a split second, it felt like the world shrank to just the two of us. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. I nodded, but it was a lie. I wasn't okay. I was terrified of what I was feeling, of what it meant, of what might happen if I let myself lean into it. But as we drove back to Lila's place, Timmy asleep in the back seat and Nate humming softly to the radio, I realized I couldn't keep running. Not from Nate, not from myself, and definitely not from the kid who'd accidentally turned my world upside down. The days after the play were a slow burn. Timmy's marriage obsession didn't let up. He'd taken to drawing pictures of me and Nate in crayon, complete with stick figure wedding rings and a rainbow cake. Lila sent me one via text, with a winking emoji and the caption, "You guys make a cute couple." I wanted to scream into a pillow, but instead, I shoved my phone in my pocket and tried to focus on work. The skate shop was my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the rhythm of ringing up customers and tweaking board designs. But even there, Nate's presence lingered like a song stuck in my head. I hadn't seen him since the play, but we'd texted a little more than usual. Nothing heavy, just dumb memes and updates about Timmy's latest antics. But every time his name popped up on my screen, my pulse kicked up a notch. I kept replaying that moment in the parking lot, his quiet "you okay?" and the way his eyes had searched mine, like he was waiting for me to say something real. I hadn't. I'd chickened out as usual. Then, on Sunday, Nate showed up at the shop unannounced. I was in the back, sorting through a shipment of wheels, when I heard his voice at the counter, joking with my coworker about the best grip tape for street skating. My stomach flipped, and I took a deep breath before stepping out. He was leaning against the counter, all easy charm, his dark hair tucked under a beanie. "Thought I'd swing by," he said, grinning. "Timmy's got a new plan. Wants us to take him to the zoo next weekend. Says it's our honeymoon." I groaned, but I couldn't help the laugh that slipped out. "Kid's relentless," I said, busying myself with restocking a display to avoid his gaze. Nate didn't move, just watched me with that infuriating calm. "You dodging me, Ethan?" he asked, his tone light but pointed. I froze, a pack of bearings in my hand. "What?" "No, just busy." He didn't buy it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the other customers wouldn't hear. "You've been weird since the play. Talk to me." I wanted to brush it off, to say it was nothing, but the weight of his words and the truth behind them pinned me in place. "It's just Timmy's got everyone thinking we're something we're not," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's messing with me." Nate's expression softened, but he didn't back off. "And what are we, Ethan?" he asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. I opened my mouth, but no words came, because the truth was I didn't know, or maybe I did, and I was too scared to say it. Before I could figure out how to respond, a customer interrupted, asking about deck sizes. I seized the excuse to escape, but Nate lingered, browsing the shop like he had all the time in the world. When he finally left, he clapped me on the shoulder again, his touch lingering just long enough to make my skin tingle. "See you at the zoo," he said, and then he was gone, leaving me with a racing heart and 1,000 questions I wasn't ready to answer. The zoo trip was a disaster waiting to happen. Timmy was in full matchmaker mode, insisting Nate and I hold hands like married people do as we wandered past the giraffes. I laughed it off, but Nate, the bastard, actually grabbed my hand, his grip warm and firm. "Gotta keep the kid happy," he said with a wink, but his thumb brushed over my knuckles, and I nearly tripped over a stroller. Timmy beamed, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. We spent the day trailing Timmy from the penguins to the lions, his energy boundless. Nate was in his element, spinning stories about the animals, making Timmy laugh so hard he spilled his ice cream. I tried to focus on the kid, on the fun, but every time Nate's arm brushed mine or he shot me that half smile, my resolve crumbled a little more. By the time we reached the reptile house, I was a mess, torn between wanting to bolt and wanting to pull Nate aside and demand to know what the hell we were doing. That night, after we dropped Timmy off at Lila's, Nate suggested grabbing a drink. We ended up at a dive bar in Fremont, the kind of place with sticky floors and neon signs that buzz too loud. Over cheap whiskey, I finally found the courage to speak. "Nate, we got to talk about this," I said, staring into my glass. "Timmy's thing, it's not just a game anymore. Not to me." He leaned back, his eyes steady on mine. "Okay," he said softly. "So what is it to you?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I don't know," I admitted, "but when I'm around you, it's like I'm seeing you for the first time, and it scares the shit out of me." Nate didn't laugh or tease. He just reached across the table, his hand resting near mine, not touching but close enough to feel the heat. "Ethan," he said, his voice low and steady, "you don't have to figure it all out tonight. But I'm here. I've always been here." And just like that, the dam broke. I didn't have answers, but I had Nate, and for the first time, that felt like enough. The bar's dim light cast shadows across Nate's face, making his eyes look deeper, more unguarded than I'd ever seen them. His words, "I'm here, I've always been here," hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack, but couldn't ignore. I took a long sip of whiskey, letting the burn ground me, and tried to find something to say that wouldn't make me sound like a complete idiot. I'm not like you, Nate," I said finally, my voice rough. "I don't know what I'm doing here." He tilted his head, studying me. "You don't have to be like me," he said. "You just have to be honest with yourself." Easier said than done. I'd spent years building walls, convincing myself my life was fine as it was, simple, straight, safe. But Nate had always had a way of slipping past those walls. And now, with Timmy's relentless matchmaking and Nate's quiet patience, they were crumbling fast. We didn't talk about it again that night. Instead, we fell into our old rhythm, joking about the zoo, reminiscing about the time we got stuck on a ferry during a storm, laughing until my sides hurt. But underneath it all, there was a current, a pull I couldn't shake. When we parted ways outside the bar, Nate hugged me, a quick, tight squeeze that felt like more than just cousins saying goodnight. "Don't overthink it, Ethan," he murmured before heading to his car. I stood there, watching his taillights disappear, my heart pounding like I'd just landed a kick flip after years of trying. The next few days were torture. I couldn't focus at work, my mind ping-ponging between Nate's words and the way his hand had felt near mine. Timmy didn't help. Lila called me midweek, laughing as she recounted how Timmy had told his teacher that his uncles were getting married at the zoo. I groaned, but a part of me, a small, reckless part, wondered what it would be like if it were true. Not the zoo part, but the rest. Me and Nate, together for real. I tried to shut it down, to tell myself it was crazy. We were cousins, for God's sake. Not blood-related. Nate's mom was adopted into our family, but still. Family. Society. Labels. It was a minefield, and I wasn't brave like Nate, who'd come out at 16 and never looked back. I was the guy who played it safe, who stuck to what he knew. But what I knew wasn't working anymore. On Saturday, I caved and texted Nate, asking if he wanted to grab coffee. He suggested a hike instead. Typical Nate, always needing to move. We met at Discovery Park, a sprawling green space overlooking Puget Sound, the kind of place that makes you feel small in the best way. The trail was muddy from recent rain, and we trudged through it, our breath visible in the crisp air. For a while, we didn't talk about anything heavy, just the view, the seagulls, the way the city looked like a postcard from this distance. Then, halfway through the loop, Nate stopped at a lookout point, the water stretching out below us like a sheet of glass. "You've been quiet," he said, not looking at me. "What's going on in that head of yours?" I kicked at a pebble, my hands stuffed in my pockets. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. Whatever this is. I'm freaking out, Nate." He turned to face me, his expression soft but serious. "You think I'm not? You think I haven't spent years wondering what it'd be like to tell you how I feel?" My breath caught. "What?" I whispered. Nate stepped closer, his voice steady but laced with something raw. "Ethan, I've been in love with you since we were kids. Not just cousin stuff. Real, messy, complicated love. And I've waited because I didn't want to scare you off. But Timmy's right about one thing, love's love. And I can't keep pretending it's not there." The world tilted. I stared at him, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. You're serious?" I managed. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "Dead serious. But I'm not going to push you. You figure out what you want, Ethan. I'll be here." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. But as we stood there, the wind whipping around us, I felt something shift. Not an answer, not yet, but a possibility. A door I'd kept locked for years, creaking open just enough to let a sliver of light through. Nate's confession hit me like a rogue wave, pulling me under and leaving me gasping. For days, I couldn't think straight, pun unintended. I'd be at the skate shop, ringing up a customer, and suddenly I'd see Nate's face, his eyes locked on mine as he said, "I've been in love with you since we were kids." It was too much, too real. I'd spent so long dodging my feelings, convincing myself they were just a fluke, that hearing them laid bare by Nate, of all people, felt like staring into the sun. I avoided him. Not proud of it, but I did. I ignored his texts, skipped our usual Sunday brunch with the family, and buried myself in work. Lila noticed, of course. She cornered me one evening when I dropped by to fix her leaky sink. "You and Nate fighting?" she asked, handing me a wrench. I shrugged, focusing on the pipes. "Just busy." She didn't buy it. "Timmy's still planning your wedding, you know. He drew you guys a house with a skate ramp in the backyard." I groaned, but my heart twisted at the thought of Timmy's earnest little drawings. I couldn't avoid Nate forever, though. Not when Timmy's birthday was coming up, and Lila had planned a big party at her place. "You're both expected," she told me over the phone, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Timmy's counting on his favorite uncles." I didn't have the energy to protest, so I agreed, knowing it meant facing Nate and everything he'd said. The party was chaos in the best way. Lila's backyard was a riot of balloons, streamers, and kids running wild. Timmy, decked out in a superhero cape, was the center of it all, directing his friends in a game of tag. I stuck to the sidelines, nursing a soda and trying to blend in with the picnic table. But then Nate showed up, carrying a wrapped gift and wearing that damn smile that made my chest ache. Timmy spotted him and sprinted over, dragging him toward me. "My uncles," he shouted, beaming. "You're here together." The other parents chuckled, but I felt like I was under a spotlight. Nate, as usual, rolled with it, ruffling Timmy's hair and saying, "Wouldn't miss it, champ." He glanced at me, his eyes searching, but I looked away, focusing on the soda can in my hand like it held the secrets of the universe. The party wore on, and Timmy kept pulling us in his orbit, making us judge his cartwheel contest, demanding we help cut the cake. Every time Nate's arm brushed mine or he laughed at something I said, my skin hummed with electricity. I hated it. I wanted it. I was a mess. After the kids had demolished the piñata and the parents started trickling out, Nate found me by the fire pit, where I was poking at the embers to avoid talking to anyone. "You've been dodging me," he said, his voice low but not accusing. I sighed, tossing the stick into the flames. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just a lot. He nodded, sitting on the bench beside me. I get it. I dropped a bomb on you. But I meant every word, Ethan. And I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw the vulnerability behind his confidence. The way his hands fidgeted, the way his eyes held mine like he was bracing for rejection. It hit me that Nate, the guy who could charm anyone, was nervous. Because of me. I don't know what I am, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I've never felt like this before. Not with anyone. And it's you, Nate. That makes it harder. He didn't say anything, just reached for my hand, his fingers brushing mine. This time, I didn't pull away. We sat there, the fire crackling, the sounds of the party fading into the background. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Timmy broke the moment, running over with a piece of cake smeared on his face. You guys are gonna kiss now, right? He asked, all innocence and hope. I laughed, a real laugh, and Nate joined in, his hand still warm against mine. Not yet, champ, Nate said, winking at me. But we're working on it. And maybe we were. Maybe, for the first time, I was ready to stop running and start figuring out what we could be. Timmy's birthday party marked a turning point, though I didn't realize it at the time. Nate's hand in mine, the firelight flickering between us, it was like a snapshot of something new, something possible. I still didn't have answers, but I was done pretending the questions didn't exist. For the next few weeks, I let myself lean into it little by little. Nate didn't push, but he didn't back off either. He'd text me dumb jokes, show up at the skate shop with coffee, invite me to late-night walks through Fremont's quirky streets. Each moment felt like a step towards something bigger, something I was finally brave enough to chase. Timmy, of course, was thrilled. He kept up his married talk, telling anyone who'd listen about his uncle's epic love story. Lila teased me mercilessly, but there was a softness in her eyes, like she saw something I was only starting to understand. You look happy, she said one day, catching me off guard as we watched Timmy play in her backyard. Happier than I've seen you in a while. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded, my throat tight with gratitude and fear and hope all tangled together. One evening, about a month after the party, Nate and I ended up at Gasworks Park, sprawled on a blanket under a sky streaked with stars. The city hummed in the distance, but it felt like we were in our own little world. We'd been talking about nothing, movies, music, Timmy's latest obsession with superheroes, when Nate turned to me, his expression serious. Ethan, he said, I need to know where you're at, because I'm all in, but I can't keep waiting forever. My heart pounded, but this time I didn't look away. I took a deep breath and said the words I've been holding back for weeks. I'm scared, Nate. Scared of what this means, of what people will think, of screwing it up. But I'm in love with you. I think I've been in love with you for a long time. His face lit up, a slow, radiant smile that made my chest ache. He reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. That's all I needed to hear, he said softly. And then, before I could overthink it, he leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle at first, tentative, like he was giving me room to pull back. But I didn't. I kissed him back, pouring years of buried feelings into it. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We didn't tell Timmy right away. Not because we were hiding, but because we needed time to figure ourselves out. When we finally did, at a family barbecue a few weeks later, he took it in stride, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I knew it, he crowed, fist pumping the air. I told you you were married. Lila laughed, pulling us both into a hug, and even our parents, after some initial surprise, came around with warmth and support. Life didn't magically become perfect. There are still questions about labels, about family dynamics, about what the world would think of two cousins building a life together. But with Nate by my side, those questions felt less like obstacles and more like challenges we'd faced together. Timmy, in his innocent, stubborn way, had seen something we hadn't dared to acknowledge. His silly game had pushed us toward a truth we might never have faced otherwise. As we stood on Lila's porch that night, watching Timmy chase fireflies in the yard, Nate slipped his arm around my waist. "So," he said, his voice warm with mischief, "when's the wedding?" I laughed, leaning into him, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. Timmy had been right all along. Love was love, messy and complicated and beautiful. And with Nate, I was ready to embrace every bit of it.